Oh, we've got a countdown. Oh no, we are
Yeah,
live already.
we're live. Hello, Ed. How are you doing today?
Hello, Mike. Yes, I am very well, thank you. Great to be here with you.
It's great to be here with you and the three people we have as well watching. So hello to those people that are watching. Ed, it's a pleasure to and a nod to WeWork. Hopefully that WeWork will still be there in a couple of weeks for you to still be working within that wonderful building. Ed, thank you so much for joining me live at Habits HQ. This is the first broadcast live from Habits HQ. So I'm honoured that you've joined me today. And today is really exciting because for me, what I want to do on these lives is find people that ultimately help the people that follow myself and whoever joins make their leadership, make their productivity, make them a better person at work. And today was really exciting because we're going to be looking at 5 habits that help people be better public speakers. But before we go into that, Ed, I'd love you just to give me a bit of an introduction and tell me a bit about being the head coach and founder of Project Charisma.
Thanks, Mike. Well, lovely to be here on your maiden episode. Very privileged to be the first guest. So I run Project Charisma. We're a training company based in Manchester, and we specialize in helping business leaders to overcome the fear of public speaking, build their confidence, and start getting themselves out there in the industry, whether that's on podcasts, panels, speeches, etc. However, I got into this in a bit of a roundabout way because I used to have severe social anxiety and I hated public speaking, couldn't bear to be the center of attention, glossophobia in the extreme. And so for many years, that was my reality until I was able to get myself out of that through a process of throwing myself into acting and speaking. And so now I think the benefit is I can see both sides of it. I understand when someone says I'm petrified because I used to be that person too.
Amazing. And what was it? Glossophobia? Was that the word that fear of public speaking?
Glossophobia is the fear of public speaking specifically. Yeah. What I had though, Mike, was a fear of being the center of attention in any situation. Okay. So even a phone call or buying a train ticket where I felt like everyone was then watching me for whatever strange reason would cause me to have this panicked response that felt completely out of my control, like any phobia. But glossophobia specifically is where people are just upset or worried with standing in front of a crowd and having to speak. So it's a bit more of a specific thing, which I think a lot of us, it's not really something that you have to be diagnosed with, right? We all have experienced that, I assume.
Yeah, it's quite scary if you think about as a human, just we're hardwired. When you're standing in front of hundreds of people, there is going to be some anxiety there. If you're standing in front of people you care about, you respect, actually that heart starts pumping, doesn't matter who you are. And it's about, for me, how you control it and how you get yourself ready. So to make sure that we respect everyone's time that's joined us today, we're going to talk through 5 different habits today. And Ed, what is your habit number 1 that you think people need to think about when speaking in public?
Okay, habit number 1 sounds cliche, but it is practice. But I don't just mean that in a very surface level, go and practice, right? There's 2 ways that I want people to think about this. The first is in a broad sense. If you are not putting yourself out there, if you are not pushing your comfort zone, if you are not testing your confidence on a regular basis, then when the day comes when that eventuality happens and you get asked to present or you get asked to pitch, it's starting from zero, right? You're starting without any momentum behind you. So it's really about getting prolific. Go and seek opportunities. Do lives like this. Do a 30-second camera to LinkedIn. There's so many opportunities to push yourself right now and to get your views out there. So that's the first thing. It's about practicing and being prolific. The other flip side of that coin is when you have something to deliver, make sure you bloody practice, because so many people, what they do is they procrastinate. They get worried, they get anxious, and it's much easier to put it off and not think about it rather than to face it and grapple with it. But all that does is set yourself up for a much harder fall at the end. So that practice is so important.
Okay, so if I'm talking to someone who's going up through their leadership journey and they're used to talking to their mates, and as they go up through an organization, are you saying actually just have as many conversations as you can that are in front of people?
Yes. So the clients that come to me for coaching, Mike, the ones that inevitably do the best and get the most progress are people who have got things in the real world that they are building up to, right? They've got presentations coming up, they've got speeches, they've got talks, they've got different events, and they might be really scared about all of these things, but they're just actively, voluntarily going out and seeking them and saying yes to them. versus the person who says, oh, I want to reach a certain level of confidence and then I'll start putting myself forward. That doesn't work. You have to learn by doing it.
Okay, cool. So if we say habit number 1 is practice, and the tip is don't save it for the keynote, find those smaller opportunities.
Perfect. Yeah, don't save it for the keynote. Make sure you build your way up to it.
Nice. Okay, brilliant. Cool. In that case, what is habit number 2 that we should think about?
So habit number 2 is around connection with people. So you've probably heard the phrase stage presence, right? And we think of someone who steps on stage or starts to speak and suddenly all eyes are drawn to them. And we describe that as someone who's has stage presence. But I think what people maybe don't always get is that to have stage presence, you need to have an inner presence, i.e., if you step on stage and you're in your own head going, "Well, will they like me? Will I do this? As I forget my bullet points?" You know, you've got all of these thoughts going on, this inner monologue. You've got a lack of presence. You're never going to have stage presence. You're never going to be seen as having that poise and that composure. So it's a really important habit to be able to get focused and present and connecting with your audience when you speak and having all of your attention, not internally on what am I doing? How do I look? How do I feel? But externally on who am I talking to? How can I help them? How can I serve these people? And that is a key distinction to make.
Okay, so what is one thing I can do then? Because does that mean it's quite a conceptual thing? What is one actual practical thing that I could do to make that come to life?
So the best practical tip for this is to really be clear on what you're trying to achieve from speaking, right? Are you trying to educate people? Are you trying to entertain them? Are you trying to get them to have some kind of insight? Are you trying to help them in whatever way? Right? There's always got to be a purpose and an objective for why you're speaking. But a lot of times people don't really focus on that. They get too wrapped up in just their own, how they're going to look and how they're going to come across. So if you can really make a habit of understanding what your objective is and focusing on that and how that's going to serve the audience, that's the best mindset, the best place to begin from.
Okay, amazing. Cool, got it. Right. So if those are the first two, what's the one that comes in the middle of all this? What's number 3?
So the middle one, I would say, is about listening to people, right? And I guess, we do hear this quite often, don't we? We all know how important it is to listen. We all have heard this, but still so many people, I think, don't quite get there. Now, a couple of distinctions, right? If you're in a team meeting, if you're having a conversation, great, that active listening can be happening as and when. If you're on stage and you've been asked to deliver a talk, then you're not necessarily listening to your audience speaking back to you, but you still want to be very aware of them. You want to be listening for their subtle cues, their body language, their facial expressions, making sure that they're really getting what you're saying. It comes back to being present again. If you're wrapped up in your own thoughts, then you're missing all of these cues that people are giving you that are really valuable to understand. So being able to listen, I think, is such an important life skill for speaking and in general.
Yeah, no, I think that definitely resonates with me as a coach, because that listening piece, to be able to connect with someone, you have to be able to reflect back what they're saying. And what you're saying about looking at the audience as well, when you're talking, there are cues. People are nodding, people are smiling, you see people's faces doing all sorts of things. And I think maybe that fall back to that second point as well, about that connect with what you're saying and how it's hitting, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think these are all linked in a certain way. And there's a lot of things that come up here, Mike, because a lot of people get told not to look at the audience. They get told to look over people's heads, right? Find one point and stare at that. It's absolutely rubbish. You should be trying to look at every single person in your audience and really connect with them for their sake and for yours. For their sake, because they want to feel that connection. And as soon as you look at them, they feel pulled into the moment and they feel seen and engaged. But from your perspective as the speaker, you need to know, is this person getting it? Are they listening? Are they engaged? Do I need to change tactic a little bit? Whatever your outcome is, whether it's to sell, to persuade, to pitch, that's going to be pivotal on each of these people in your audience getting the message that you want to get across.
Okay, nice. I love it. And actually, I think that goes really well into our next one about that talking with purpose. So tell us a bit more about that.
Oh, so Mike, have you ever been to see a talk and by the end of it, you've gone, not really sure what the point of that was. Not really sure what they were trying to get at there. And we do it on LinkedIn. We do it in posts. It's so easy to ramble. It's so easy to kind of fluff your way through things. So There's a great technique from the military from this called bluff, BLUF, and it simply means bottom line up front. So in the military, when you've got to get across really imperative information fast, they don't have time for fluff. They don't have time for people, meandering around. So you get the bottom line of what you're trying to say, the most important sentence, and you stick it up front. And this is a great technique to use in meetings, in the business world. Get to the point, bottom line up front.
Okay, amazing. And what's the best way to work out that point? Because I know lots of leaders that love a meander.
Yeah.
Is there any tips you have for distilling that down before you walk or go to the meeting? Is there a way to do that you particularly do?
Well, sometimes this is the hardest thing as well, and especially for maybe a more prepared speech. A lot of people think, right, I want to talk about X subject. But when you try and boil that down into a key message or an idea, sometimes that's what takes the most work. But it's so worth doing, because once you've got that key idea of what you want to get across, it makes everything else easier. So in TED, they call this ideas worth sharing. And every TED talk at its heart is an idea worth sharing. Now, in a meeting or a more kind of typical situation, you might not have some big grandiose idea about saving the world or whatever, but there will be some key bit of information that you've brought everyone to listen to, whether it's an update, whether it's a change, whether it's a request, whatever it is, right? But you need to figure out how you can boil that down into a simple sentence and get that up front.
Okay, nice. I love it. Love it. And if we're thinking about all of that, what's the fifth point that brings that all together?
So we talked about quite a lot of maybe more, how you said, intellectual things here so far, Mike. So I thought for our last one, we'd bring it back down to something a bit more palpable, a bit more audible, which is the speaking voice, right? Your actual voice. Now, it's a big argument, this, or a big conversation in public speaking about what's more important. Is it the words you say? Is it how you say them? Is it your body language? Ultimately, it's all important. It all has a place, right? But the speaking voice, I think, is often underestimated. And we could look at different habits that people do wrong. So maybe people talk too fast. Maybe they talk in a too monotone voice that doesn't change. Maybe they have too many filler words that are creeping in between every sentence. All of these things are what we call credibility killers. And the problem is they get in the way of your message. They distract people and they stop your ideas coming across in the most clear way. So understanding your voice and really mastering this instrument that we all have, right? To put on my actor's cap and be very cliche about it, the voice is an instrument and we all need to learn how to play it a little bit better.
Okay, cool. So what's a way that what people can do following this to work on their voice and how it's coming across? All
right, so I'm sure you've probably done this or heard about someone else who records their voicemail message. Hello, Ed speaking. I'm not here right now. Please call back. And then they hear themselves back on the phone and go, "Oh my, does my voice sound like that?" And I think a lot of people we just don't really understand how we sound. We're not aware of our own voice. So the best place to start is to record yourself, listen back with a critical ear, and think about how you're coming across. And in doing so, you develop what I call vocal awareness, which is really paying attention to how I sound, how you sound, how people on podcasts sound, how really good speakers sound, and how really bad speakers sound. And by gaining that awareness, we have more control over our own voice in the process. But it is a process. It does take time. You have a whole lifetime of vocal habits that have been built up, right, from your family, your culture, your neighborhood. Some might be good, some might be less good. So working through all of these and fine-tuning some of them does take a little while.
Yeah, and I suppose that this loops us back round to the start and the practice, doesn't it? And actually giving yourself enough time. Because if you know that you're going to be talking on a stage, you don't want to start recording yourself 10 days before, because might not give yourself enough time to relax as much as you might want to. Yeah. So it's about having those journeys in mind, isn't it? Is that actually this month it's talking to my team, next it's a company meeting, and then beyond that, it might be those keynotes, those seminars, whatever it may be. It's planning. Is it planning that journey as well? So if you do want to go through sort of that progression.
I think that's absolutely right, Mike. I mean, I don't know. I just thought of the analogy of, if you wanted to run a marathon, right, which I've never done, by the way, probably don't have any intention of doing. I don't know if you're much of a runner, but if you wanted to do one of these,
twice.
Right? Okay. maybe you can talk about this more than I can, man. But if you wanted to do an ultra marathon of some kind, you're probably going to plan that 2 years out, and you're going to spend the next 2 years building up, a number of steps to get yourself there. And you could think about doing some big keynote or a big TED talk in a similar way. You're going to want to plan that a year, 2 years out, depending on where you're starting from, and have a lot of different stepping stones between now and then.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. So when you run a marathon, it's really strange. So I've failed twice to get there, blown up about 18, 20 miles both times, which is quite upsetting because that's really close to running a marathon.
Yeah.
But there's a funny point where a 6-mile run, when you first start, is quite long. But then you get up to those 18-mile marks, and a 6-mile run, you say, I'm just going to do a short run. And you're out running for an hour. So something that was insurmountable when you first got off that couch.
Yes.
It's that, and it's just about that regular doing something. And that's why I love habits, because habits are about compound. Because every time you do it, you reinforce the thing that you want to do. And you tell your brain, this is how it works. And this is why everything you're saying for me is these are things you can practice and things you can absolutely get better.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned that other side of the marathon running there, Mike, because it's exactly the same with speaking. Once you've gone and you've spoken in front of an audience of a few hundred people, doing those team presentations is going to feel like a walk in the park. It's the same reason why Roman soldiers used to have, they used to practice with weapons that were twice as heavy as their normal weapons. So they'd be practicing, with these really heavy swords. And then when they got out into the field for the real fight, it felt really light. They could run around, they'd be nimble. It's kind of the same thing going on here. You want to, practice hard, but train hard, and then it'll be much easier.
Brilliant. I love it. And that's it, Ed. Thank you very much. We've flown through those. I think I've learned loads, and I've learned a bit about history as well. So that's a win. I didn't
think I get a Roman mention in there, but there you go.
So you didn't have history. Didn't see history teacher on your LinkedIn profile. So Ed, is there anything you've got coming up that you'd like people to know about that you'd like them to maybe come and join you in next year?
Yeah, so just 3 things, Mike, very quickly. I have a 1-day masterclass that I run quarterly. The next one is at the end of January. So if you want to come and throw yourself into some public speaking, that's a great shout. I also do one-to-one coaching for people who want to really spend a bit of time developing their skills, putting themselves out there, becoming a thought leader in their field. And I also do team training. So if you've got a team of senior managers or people in your business who you think collectively need a bit of confidence, I can come in and help them with that too.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much, Ed. And then anyone else, just to wrap up, if this has caught your interest and you want to find out more about habits and actually how it helps your productivity and leadership, jump onto my page. There's a short explainer about the program I'm also running in the new year. And maybe I've got a section on influence, and I think I might have just found my guest speaker for influence, the influence month, or within that program. So thank you very much, Ed, and thank you very much for tuning in. Drop me a DM, drop Ed a DM if you'd like to work with us or find out more about what we do. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mike.
Cheers, Ed.